Hello, my weather people. My gosh, it seems like forever since we've done a podcast.
It has
been. How did I do it? And excuse my voice. John and I are just coming off of a nasty flu.
Keep it away. Don't want.
No, we're not contagious anymore. It's just lingering
Okay, good.
stuff.
I feel better.
And today's guest is the one and only Andy Bailey, who's WCM. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's right.
At NWS, National Weather Service at Pleasant Hill. And excuse me for my voice and all that.
Yeah, it's great.
Anyways, it's good to have you here.
I really appreciate you asking me. This is going to be fun.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I could do with a little less winter weather, but otherwise I'm fine.
Right?
Yeah.
But at least the Chiefs won.
Oh, man, I tell you what, I thought the game was over.
I had to turn it off. I couldn't. And then when I thought, it's me. Because as soon as I checked in on it, then we get all these touchdowns, and I missed it. And I was like, okay. So started watching after that and got it a shout. So, yay.
My furnace went out. I really missed it.
That sucks.
Yeah, that was
Well,
fun.
at least we're not down to, 17 degrees with the wind chill of minus 3.
Mother Nature did me a favor
like
on that one for sure.
So, Indy, I ask all my guests, where are you from? And
I grew up in Iowa, northern Iowa. Yeah, I was on a farm. Grew up on a farm my whole life, at least as a kid.
Really?
Yeah.
What part of Iowa?
Belmont, Iowa, which is north central Iowa. It's about maybe 30 minutes southwest of Mason City, which is kind of maybe the furthest north kind of major, in quotes, major Iowa town up there.
Wow. So how did you get into weather? What?
Well, it was probably on the farm because my dad was always, watching the clouds as they'd roll in, and we'd always be either wanting rain or wanting the rain to stop.
Your dad was a farmer?
Yeah, my dad was a farmer. He we had hogs, chickens, corn, and soybeans. So not a big farm, but that certainly was a big part of.
Well, I always heard the farmers were the best weather forecasters.
I don't know about that. I don't know how good he was, but we were out watching it all the time. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. So interest, and you decided to go to school for it.
And I was always just naturally interested in science. When I was in first grade, I wanted to be an archaeologist because I was like every other first grader. I really liked dinosaurs and stuff like that.
I dug for China once.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Did you ever do the digging for China thing?
I didn't. I was kind of into fossils and stuff like that, but I never really dug giant holes.
I did find an arrowhead once.
Oh, yeah?
That was
That's
sick.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was your first thing, was archaeology, and then...
Yeah, and then as, just in school, you learn a little bit about weather here or there. They'll have a unit on it or something, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. I still remember in third grade, we had to go outside and take observations, and it was snowing, and the thermometer said 35, but we had learned that freezing was 32, and I couldn't understand how it could be snowing and only 35 degrees. And the other thing is, the town I grew up in is Iowa famous for having the only F5 tornado to occur in October. It actually occurred on Homecoming Day, and every year on Homecoming, the school has a big parade, down the main street, just typical small town stuff. And they set up a stage downtown, and they had canceled that like 20 minutes before because they heard a big storm was coming through. And actually an F5 tornado hit like at 3 p.m. on Homecoming Day.
What year?
I believe it was October 14th, 1966.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and so
66 was the same year as the Topeka, so...
Was it? Yeah.
Sounds like a big year then.
Yeah, probably. And for me, I was born in 69, so I obviously didn't experience it, but just that was a big part of the history growing up, and that was kind of a touch point when you talked about weather and science. Well, we had this big tornado, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And really back then, that's how the town defined itself, was by before the tornado and after the tornado.
Huh.
And so, that was probably something else that played into it, just having such a devastating tornado and being rare as well, striking in October, for up that far north, that's a pretty unusual thing.
Yeah, that really is.
Yeah. So you decided, hey, I'm going to look into meteorology.
Well, yeah, I did, and my high school guidance counselor said, Dad, don't do it. There's no jobs in it. And yeah, really.
Really?
And,
back then?
Yeah. And so I was going to major.
We're the same age, so yeah.
Yeah, I was going to major in physics then because I just liked physical science a lot. And this is going to sound really bad, but I went to Iowa State University, and one of the first classes they have you take is like a 100 level class that's for no credit, just to learn different careers in the field, right?
Sure.
And I got to tell you, the other freshmen in there were so weird. I mean, they were just, this is I started college in 88, and it's like, I was a typical college kid. I'm like, what are you guys doing this weekend? I'm thinking, well, is there a party? Are we going to go to the football game? What are we going to do? And they were all like soldering motherboards on their computers. And this is back in like 1988.
And that is totally cool to do that now.
Well, it is, but back then it was really fringe. And it was like, you had to be like off the deep end to like build your own computer in 1988. And
I think that's cool.
And they were playing online games and stuff back then. And before we had like, I think a VAX workstation or VAX network at college, and they were playing online games on that thing.
Had to stress test the network, right?
I don't know. So
that
anyway,
was our excuse.
I told myself there's no way I think these guys are going to be way too into it, and I'm just not going to care enough to be able to survive physics. Not only that, but you have to get a master's or PhD to do anything with it. But one of the tours we took, because we'd go around to different departments on campus to learn how physics could maybe interact with those, was the meteorology department. Okay. And so the professor was saying, the National Weather Service is undergoing this huge modernization, and in 3 or 4 years, right when you guys are ready to graduate, they are going to be hiring so many people. And I was like, really? Okay. So I went back and talked to that professor the next day, and he was like, yeah, that's what's going on. So I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm changing my major from physics to this. I quit going to that physics 100 class, and I was a meteorology major and didn't look back. So it was probably a good thing that we actually had that little class and that tour, because I may be very unhappy engineer or physicist or something somewhere.
Now that's synchronicity or something, or serendipity.
Serendipity.
Because have you not gone, your life could have went a whole different way. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I love it when things like that happen.
It worked
and
out.
So once you got your degree, you decided, I'm going to work for NWS.
I did. I was always far more interested in operational meteorology and forecasting than research. Just I didn't care about that. They didn't really do it for me that much. And, I volunteered. I worked part-time at a TV station. Back then, for most of Iowa, the ABC affiliate was located on the campus of Iowa State. And I went and volunteered there and then got a part-time job there, really to learn forecasting, because at Iowa State, they weren't very operational at the time. Okay. You learned the basics. They did a good job with that, but there wasn't a lot of training in forecasting and how to analyze the models and that sort of thing.
And they have a training center like we do now.
Right. And so that's why I went to the TV station was they had their chief meteorologist was, I think it was Don Novak, and he was a retired Air Force officer, Air Force forecaster that then went into TV. And so he really helped me with the forecasting part of things.
Nice.
And I also volunteered at the Weather Service. And I knew I was not going to be on TV. I knew that. And I even told them, I wasn't like, hey, I'm trying to be a TV meteorologist. I told them I'm just here to learn forecasting. And they didn't care, because I would go in and work the really early morning weekend hours. So they didn't have to do it. So they were happy with that. But I did volunteer at the National Weather Service. And I knew, in the first couple of times, that's what I wanted to do. It was just, it's where I felt like home. I could envision an entire career there, and
it's not a job. It's not a job if you enjoy what you do.
Well, that's exactly right. And I remember I had to work a lot in college, like to make money for college. And one of my jobs, I cleaned this giant car dealership in Des Moines. So I drive 45 minutes each way every night. And during the overnight, I would have to clean this huge car dealership. And I remember mopping the floors, just thinking, I don't know what it'll be like when I can do meteorology for my job. It's kind of like I couldn't believe that someday that would actually happen. So the fact that it did was a good thing. But I mean, the janitor job was good, because I would be mopping the floor and I would be like deriving the equations that we had learned from dynamics. I'd be running those through my head, right? And so honestly,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that was kind of the only time I had to do my homework. And so
that is true, actually. Like when I clean, I have to work out an issue.
Yeah.
I just start cleaning, because that's mindless work, and it allows your brain to free up and think about, okay, I need to solve this problem. How do I do that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it. So it actually turned out to be a good thing. I mean, I worked a lot of hours, but it worked out.
Hey, so you got your degree. What was your first job?
My first job was in a private weather company. I worked for Weather Central in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't know if they still are, but at the time they were co-located with a TV station there.
Okay.
And we were just doing, private just forecasts for various vendors. We made a lot of newspaper weather pages. Those were pretty big back then.
Wow.
We made some TV graphics we made them for Good Morning America. That's right. I forgot we
Really?
made graphics for Good Morning America. Yeah. And Televisa, which I think was the precursor to Telemundo. And so I told people I had about 20 minutes to make forecasts for something on the order of like 80% of the world's population. It wasn't that high, but it was like 50% of the world's population.
No pressure.
Yeah, we had to do Europe, South America, North America, and for some reason we had to do Northern Africa too. I don't remember why. But the funny thing about making the forecast back then, this for like Europe and South America, we didn't have, that was when we had the Difax maps, right? They're just getting printed off on those big dot matrix printer. Yes. You'd tear it off and you'd hang them on the wall. Well, we didn't get like the whole hemisphere. We would just get the northern half of the Western hemisphere. And so you'd have to turn it sideways and you could look at Western Europe then, but you couldn't look at Eastern Europe. So you just kind of have to say, well, if it was here yesterday and now it's there, you just kind of advect it on. So it wasn't the most accurate thing ever.
In theory, then it's going to go over
that's
here.
all you could do, right?
Yeah.
And we had 3 satellite
And
images.
everything crossed it. You're right.
Right. For South America, we only had 3 satellite images a day. They were visible satellite images.
3?
3, and that's all we had. And so we would look at that to make tomorrow's forecast.
Wow.
And then the worst thing of it was Mexico was the biggest forecast we had to do since it was Televisa. But we could see Televisa on the cable because it was a university town, so that we could see our weather maps on there. But they were changing them. We would it was going to be sunny and whatever the temperatures were in Celsius, we'd put in there. But they'd always start putting clouds on the map, and we asked them, why is that? And they said, well, because the Ministry of Tourism says we have to do that because people equate the sun with hot, and we don't want to kill tourism because people think it's hot here. Well, it is hot there.
Right. Mexico.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'd go to all the trouble of making the forecast, and then some guy would just change it anyway because they didn't want it to look hot.
Not muck up the tourism.
Yeah, so that was my first job, and I only worked there for 5 months until I got my first job in the Weather Service, and that was in Des Moines. I was in
So you were back home, basically.
Yeah, really, I was, and that's where I volunteered when I was in college. And so they knew me and they wanted me to work for them, but they didn't have a position open when I graduated. So when something came open, the meteorologist in charge called me up and said, hey, we have a job. Are you going to apply? I was like, well, yeah, I am. And so it all worked out.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I saw you worked in Vegas.
Yeah. Well, after Des Moines, I went to Rapid City, South Dakota for 7 years.
Okay.
And then I was a warning coordination meteorologist in Las Vegas for 4 years before coming here.
So what's it like to go from Des Moines and Rapid City over to Vegas where monsoons and that's about it?
Yeah, it was a big culture change for sure.
I'm betting.
And I tell people, because I have the same job now that I had in Las Vegas. I was a WCM both places. My job here is way easier, but way busier.
Right.
In Las Vegas, nobody cared about the weather, and so it's kind of like selling ice to Eskimos. You talk to an emergency manager about it, and they just like, we get some flooding, but I don't really worry about that.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah,
we got washways for that.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating flooding. The real problem was at the time, I was there from 2003 to 2007. And, in 2001, we had 9/11 happen. And so Las Vegas, the first year I got there, they got about $400,000 in Homeland Security money for security and stuff. The year I left, they got about $20 million. And
really?
so
Well,
there's just if you remember back then, there's a fire hose of money coming out for Homeland Security and all that stuff. Like I remember they all had these little badges that were radiation detectors. They all had to wear all the time and stuff. And so they didn't have time to talk about weather. They were more concerned with having to acquire the money, spend the money, track the money, and then justify what they spent it on. And so that's most of what their time was spent
and I'm
on
assuming
back
they
then.
were going more towards terrorist attacks.
Yeah,
and
that's what
weather.
they were worried about.
Yeah.
Less on the weather than the terrorism stuff. And so it was a very difficult job in that regard. But we only had 6.5 counties in our forecast area. They were huge counties. One of them, San Bernardino County, is bigger than Delaware or Rhode Island.
Oh, I know. My son lived in Vegas for 3 years.
Yeah. So the
interesting
huge,
area,
huge counties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, weather was very impactful out there.
Sure.
Around 50 people a year died in Clark County due to heat. And, there were years.
Either got heat or flooding.
Yeah, more people. There were several years. Well, I was only there 4 years, but at least a couple of the years, there were more people that were killed by heat in Clark County than were killed nationwide by tornadoes.
I believe that.
And so that's, kind of one of those things you just never hear about. But
right.
a lot of times people will.
And that dry heat.
Yeah. They'll pull over, on the side of the road because they want to walk out and take a picture or something. So they'll walk a quarter mile off the road. And when it's 120, a lot of times they don't make it back to the car.
Right.
They're just out there dead.
Because it doesn't feel so hot right away, but it slowly catches up to you with that type of heat.
Yeah.
Whereas here with the humidity, it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
Going back in.
Yeah.
Yep. So so then you made it here. Kansas City. How long you been here?
I have been a long time. I've been here 13 years. It's been a little over 13 years, right at 13 years right now. So, we wanted to get a little bit closer to the family since I mentioned I grew up in Iowa. Right. And this is such a great opportunity. Mike Hudson had the job before me.
Oh, I love Mike.
Yeah, and he's did a great job. So I knew I'd be walking. Guy. Yeah, I knew I'd be walking into a good situation.
Right.
And I still remember he came down because he's at our regional headquarters now. He came down to kind of get me oriented one of my first days. And he said, things are running pretty well here. The gist of what he said was, just don't screw it up.
Don't screw the pooch.
Basically, yeah. And so I was like, geez, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the encouragement.
No pressure, man.
But he was right. We back then, and we're still blessed today that we've got we have no problem getting really, really talented staff working at our office. We've always had great forecasters. My fellow managers are fantastic. I got a great boss. So,
that's great.
I can't imagine a better situation.
And so what is your job for people that don't know?
Sure. As the Warning Coordination Meteorologist, I'm really the liaison or the person that works with a lot of the people who use our products, our partners, like the emergency management community. Every small town, every community has an emergency manager, and their job is to prepare the community to deal with disaster. So I have to make sure that they know how to use the information we're providing, and we're providing the right type of information to them. I also work very closely with our broadcast partners. I'm kind of the main liaison with them. Mm-hmm. And so that's really the cornerstone of my job, is to work with those two groups.
How do you do that? How do you communicate back and forth?
A lot of email. Email, phone calls. But
do you guys still do ham? I mean, I have a license that expired, but I had one.
Not in the office anymore. Things have changed so rapidly in the last 10 years that we can put out one post on Facebook, hey, anybody getting hail in Jackson County, and we'll get 200.
Twitter seems to be.
With photo and video.
Yeah, and so, it just didn't make sense anymore.
To do the ham to and do that. All that stuff.
Now, there are still, Northland Aries still does most of the storm spotting, I believe, for Platte and Clay County. Mm-hmm. So ham radio is still very actively involved, and KC Skywarn still has folks who are spotting the weather. They just, instead of bringing the net control operators into our office to kind of gather all the reports up, they do it from home, and we have a system called NWS Chat that has emergency managers, the media, and us.
I actually am not that familiar. John, you want to take this? Because, I have some other questions regarding this, but you went into the NWS Chat.
Talking to you like Joe Loria a few weeks ago, and then we had Lisa Teachman on. She's down in Wichita now. They both talked about how useful NWS Chat is, but I've also heard there's a few times it's been down recently, and I know Lisa was asking me if I knew anything about that. I said I don't know, but if we have somebody on that works with that, we'll ask that. And do you want to talk a little bit about NWS Chat and how that works with your media partners and any problems you've had with that recently or ways to improve that?
Sure.
Sure.
NWS Chat is a system that we use to communicate in real time, mostly during severe weather and also during winter weather. The people we allow in the chat room are emergency management partners as well as our broadcast media partners. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's really meant to have very quick, efficient communications during severe weather.
Yes.
And it's going to be kind of some of the non-official information sometimes. For instance, maybe one of our forecasters is looking at a storm on radar and they're getting really concerned with rotation. They say, man, this thing's really starting to crank. And maybe they're kind of genning up a tornado warning, for instance, but they're not quite ready to send it out. They're not quite sure. Well, that's something we can very quickly put in NWS chat saying, hey, we're watching that storm that's moving through this county. It's really showing pretty good signs of rotation. We're considering a tornado warning, so just a heads up, be watching for that.
Okay.
Then the emergency manager can kind of maybe reposition their spotters.
Got
the
it.
media folks don't have to be analyzing the radar. We're basically doing that for them, so they can say, hey, we're hearing on NWS chat they're watching for rotation in this storm here. Okay. So if you're in the path, seek shelter. We also receive a lot of reports from our spotters through the emergency managers, and those are extraordinarily valuable.
Here in a minute.
Yeah, the media loves those because if they're in a tornado situation, I believe in Kansas City anyway, all 4 stations have to go wall to wall if there's a tornado warning.
Oh, absolutely.
And if there's no new information and they just have only the warning and the radar, they're doing a lot of tap dancing, trying to fill the time and make it look professional and all that. So the more that they can talk about, okay, in this location we had golf ball size hail, and here we've got trees down on power lines, and we've getting reports of a possible tornado down in this location. That helps them paint a much better picture of what's going on with the weather. And also then social scientists have told us that also then impacts people's behavior in advance of the storms, because if they're getting real-time feedback that the storm is producing devastating weather, they're more likely to seek shelter.
That is true. I've studied that.
Yeah.
And but I also know they need 3 notifications before they act.
Well, yeah, there's this whole Dennis Milletti, who's one of the probably the most accomplished social scientists in talking about how people respond to warning.
I know.
There's this whole multi-step process they have to go through before they finally seek shelter. They have to receive the warning. They have to believe that the threat exists. They're verifying what their people around them are doing, right? And there's a lot more. I'm just skipping over some of this stuff. But there's so many things they have to go through in their mind before they finally decide to act on the warning.
Optimism bias. It's not going to happen to me. And
Probably,
when it actually is, it's denial.
Right.
I can't believe this is happening to me. So let's make sure about that, because I don't want to believe it. It's so scary to people. So I understand that. I mean,
I do. And sometimes people are like, oh, that's not true. But then I tell them, okay, imagine you're in a shopping mall.
Right.
And the fire alarm goes off.
Thank you.
What are you what happens? You're like, first of all, you're trying to figure out what that is. You're trying to understand what is that warning. And then you're thinking, okay, I've never been in a situation where the mall has burnt down on me, so I don't know that this is a real threat. So you're going to be smelling for smoke, right? You're going to be looking for signs of smoke or fire. You're going to be looking around to see what everybody else is doing. You're going to be looking maybe in the stores to see what the store employees are doing. And if they're not doing anything, if they're just like going on like, oh, here we go again. This happens every Tuesday because somebody burnt toast in the food court or whatever, right? Then you're probably not going to do anything. But on the other hand, if you smell smoke and you see people very quickly making their way to the exit or maybe even running, you see firemen come in, you're probably going to get the heck out of there, right? And so
they'll take it serious.
Yeah, it's the same thing with weather. You really have to kind of validate these things in your mind before you really decide to seek action or take action.
Exactly. And that's why also I notice people, especially in Oklahoma with all the helicopters, which we have here too, when they actually see the tornado too, that's when they, now it's time to really do something.
Yeah.
And so I know it's really rough for you guys, especially when something is just radar indicated with no verification on the ground truth. I mean, it's got to be rough because, there could be something there that's heading into some populated area. But unless you have the ground truth, no one's going to really take any action.
Right. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people don't understand is that the radar gives us such an incomplete picture. I mean, it's an amazing tool. And our ability to warn on tornadoes has gone way up in the early 90s when they were first deployed. But you guys know this. I mean, there's still so much it doesn't show us. Never mind the fact that our knowledge of how tornadoes actually form is really incomplete, right? I mean, as a science, we don't fully understand that.
Certainly not.
And so that's your base problem. Then on top of that, you've got this remote sensing tool of the radar that the skill of it varies based on how far away the storm is from the radar. if it happened to be scanning it at just the right time, most of our tornadoes are very short-lived, so it's even possible they happen between scans of the radar.
Right.
Or most of the time it's also too small to actually show up in the data. And so, a Linwood type situation like we had last year is very rare for us around here. So most of the time our tornado warnings are radar indicated, and oftentimes, especially at night, we won't hear of any information, potential damage until, maybe 15, 20 minutes after the tornado's actually lifted.
Right. And we also get QLCS and mesovortex, like the one that happened up here. What year was that, John?
Well, there's been several, but what was that?
It was around 1 a.m. and
2006 or something like that.
It was May 2nd of 2007.
I think the binder was still
1 or
here.
2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we had
that was a tough
Northland
call.
here had 2 or 3 tornadoes that came across out of a squall line.
Yep.
That was pretty sobering.
And it's hard for a person like me that's my, he does the forecasting, I do the aftermath or the preparedness part. But I've noticed that people pay more attention to winter weather than they do severe. And John can verify this the other day when he went to go get bread and milk. And he was like, it was like the apocalypse out there. I mean, and I thought, well, people are paying attention, but I thought, why is it that they pay attention more to winter than they do severe when it could be just as deadly, but in a different way?
I think it's because if we have a big winter storm come through, it's going to impact everybody.
Yeah.
And we all have had experiences in winter
too.
storms. We've all been snowed in. We've all maybe even been stuck in a blizzard in our car.
Right. Ice storm of
ice storm.
1992. I actually had to drive that from Bonner Springs to Kansas City North. Took 6 hours.
Yeah, the power can go out, all that stuff. But if we issue a tornado warning, it's going to be for oftentimes just a part of a county, the warning. Mm-hmm. And if there's a tornado, it's going to be a very, very small part of that warning. Mm. So most of the county won't be hit by the tornado.
Right.
Most of the warning won't be hit by the tornado. And I can tell you, in my life, I've probably been in 40 or 50 tornado warnings. Never once did I have to get off the couch and go into my shelter. I know that because my house was never hit, right? And that's the average experience of the average person.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in a bunch of tornado warnings. I've never been hit. So
you just led me to something. How do you feel about that? Just warning an entire county. Do you think that should be maybe revamped or relooked at and studied?
Yeah, we don't do the whole county. Are you saying maybe we should do
the whole
county?
Like here, Clay County, which is the county I know because I was born and raised here. They on May 28th warned us, we were actually taking cover. But it lifted and it recycled, and then it kind of went funky again up in Gladstone and such.
And they had the tornado up near
Kearney.
Kearney, right. Kearney, yeah. And May 4th, 2003, and it's like, well, first of all, you get the broadcasters where the people call in, like, oh, you're kind of in my show. But because living here just north of the river is different than living way up in Excelsior Springs. Yeah. Whole different. I mean, because this is a big county. I mean, it's a decent-sized county. And so if you warn the whole county, then everybody's going to freak out.
Well, I think probably we ought to clarify that, the Weather Service has gotten a lot more precise with the warnings, particularly like with tornado warnings where you put in a polygon and you actually just warn part of a county. But sometimes some counties, depending where they're located, they'll run the sirens for a larger section of the county because that's just how they're set up, I guess.
Yes,
right.
I understand that has a lot to do with the EMs. But then I get people call me and like, they said there's something up by Liberty. Why do I have to take cover over here that's right on the Platte County line? I was like, well, I got nothing. It's just think the way we do it.
Yeah, a big part of the problem is our warning and dissemination system hasn't caught up with our technology because most people in their pocket now have a device that knows exactly where they're at, and it's connected to the internet constantly, right? And if there's a tornado warning, we can't pinpoint the tornado to that degree of accuracy, but we can really narrow it down a lot more so than our warnings can do. Mm-hmm. The problem is the uncertainty as you go forward in time, and the uncertainty gets very large very quickly as far as where is that tornado going to go? Is it gonna occlude into the main, into the supercell and kind of turn, or is the whole supercell going to turn to the right like it did in Joplin and completely change directions? And so that's kind of why the polygon is far bigger than the actual track that we're thinking, because we know that the track's probably not going to be the most accurate thing. We may be within a mile of knowing where the tornado is at the very beginning of the warning, but as you go out in time, that's where
a lot of things change.
Yes, things change. We don't totally understand the environment. We don't know how the storm is going to evolve, and in fact, that's why I think the Joplin tornado warning was probably one of the best tornado warnings I've ever seen in my life, because the storm was going to the northeast. And when they drew the polygon straight east. And as soon as that storm hit the polygon, it took a hard right. And it was like, holy crap. I mean, that's such a gutsy warning. It's very rare.
Is that when they went emergency?
I think that was the initial warning. They went emergency after that.
We were chasing that. And the sirens actually did go off twice at least.
Yeah.
While we were in Joplin proper.
Yeah, there were two different warnings, one for part of the storm that was a little further north originally, and then the part that reformed back to the southwest, and they really nailed that once it got going, I think. It was just getting people to pay attention to it.
And considering it was such an HP, which we get a lot of here, as you know, with our stationary fronts, our warm fronts, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about chasers, ground truth?
I don't have a problem with chasers. Obviously, we love their ground truth
network.
We do, and we'll watch their feeds.
Do you call them?
We do. Yeah, we call them if we think they have a good vantage point to the storm. Ask them what they've seen.
Because I had a chaser friend that wanted me to ask you, what do you want? Because they do live stream. They do spotter network. They're from LA, and when they come out here to chase, they want to help. And they're like, what do you want from us?
Probably the best thing they could do to alert us if they're on a storm and they're seeing something interesting would be to either send us a direct message in Twitter with a URL of their stream so that we can, because we're constantly watching social media in the middle of severe weather. So since they're not going to be able to be on NWS chat, just hitting us up in Twitter with a direct message, or even just tagging us in Twitter.
Do you have a address to say over the air?
I believe it's just at NWS Kansas City is our Twitter handle. Yeah. And so they could easily just...
is that for all the stations too? I mean, because not just us, like Topeka, Lawrence, et cetera.
No, it'd be different for each office.
Each National Weather Service office would be different.
But I mean, be weather and then this station. Or
I think it's NWS Topeka, NWS Springfield, NWS Wichita. I generally think that's the way.
And my girlfriend, her name is Anna Stromberg, and she really loves to help. And she's like, they've actually called them watching live stream. You guys have once, and a few others. And she's like, I never know what to tell them. So it's like she wants to get the information to you like quick, fast, in a hurry. Yeah. So if you call them and let's say we have another May 28th, or God forbid another May 4th situation, what do you want to hear from chasers? Like quick, when you call them. Say you're saying their live stream.
Number one, what have they seen in the last 5 or 10 minutes?
Okay.
Are they observing strong rotation? Has the rotation increased, decreased?
I'm assuming location, but then you have that.
Yeah, the location, obviously. But really what they've observed and what the storm structure's like, the good ones know that's already, it's outflow dominated. It's not going to produce a tornado, or maybe they've seen it cycle several times and here we go again. It's spinning up again.
Okay.
Just really, that's what we want to know is what has been happening and what are they seeing right now.
Are you guys still monitoring hashtags on Twitter and social media? You guys,
we use a tool called TweetDeck where we can set up several different columns, right? And so we have all sorts of. That's how we monitor people DMing us and or just tagging us.
You guys get just bombarded with that hashtag during an event where it's just like a flood, or is it just?
No? Not really. Not really. And usually it's pretty quick to be able to filter through what's worth looking at.
Yeah, I know my Twitter. If you like, I refresh it and it's just that.
Yeah.
But that's a nice way for people, especially like motorists and stuff like that might happen across something.
At least you're on Twitter. I still don't know.
You get the whole state that way, and that'll get somebody in some office in the region. I'm sure.
Yeah, and even if somebody sends us something that maybe belongs in Topeka, we'll pick up the phone and call Topeka and say, hey, this was dropped in our feed. You can take a look at it. And yeah, we're constantly handing off pieces of information like that. So even if somebody, let's say a chaser is in Florida and they're seeing a tornado in Florida, but they only have our phone number, if they call us, we will instantly call whatever office in Florida saying, hey.
Good to know. Repeat that, please.
Yeah.
Because chasers need to know this.
Yeah,
Seriously, I didn't know this.
A chaser,
that's good information.
Yeah, and so I guess what it really gets down to is they may have contacts in one National Weather Service office, but maybe they're in an area that they don't normally go to. Maybe they're in eastern Colorado, and they need to get a hold of the Goodland office. If they get a hold of the office that they do know of, that office will go out of their way to try to get that information to Goodland.
What about new chasers that just call 911?
It's probably not the best, and that's really the kind of the difference. Chasers are a good and bad thing. Usually the ones that are the ones who are on Severe Studios or one of these other streaming sites, they're usually doing it in a safe manner. They're usually, they're following kind of the protocols that they should be doing, and the chaser etiquette, all that stuff. The problem comes in when it's like everybody with a cell phone and a radar app on their phone go out there and they clog up these rural roads. Yeah. And that's a real problem. And that's
annoying for us chasers.
Well, I'm sure it is.
The chasers.
But that's where the local law enforcement becomes very anti-chaser very quick, because if their emergency vehicles can't get somewhere, or they're concerned that they've got all these people that may be impacted, and now you've just created a problem because now all my emergency people, instead of taking care of the people in their hometown, have to go out and take care of all these chasers that were in the wrong spot.
Bingo.
We had a good conversation at ChaserCon last year about that with, who was it, Reed up there in the Kansas Highway Patrol, and I think somebody from Oklahoma State Patrol was there as well. That was a really good talk.
But I've had zero problems with police. Of course, my father was a firefighter and an EMT, and I was raised with police in my house. So when John and I have been sitting on the side of the road watching something, if a trooper comes up, I'm like, I'm sorry, are we in the way? Yeah. It's the first thing I ask. Are we in the way? I mean, this is before. And no, just be polite. Don't get in their way. Let them do their job. Yeah. And they're really nice to you. In fact, he actually came back and goes, let me ask you a question. I went, what? And he goes, what do I tell people when they're on the road and there's a tornado? I'm like, first of all, they shouldn't be there. Yeah. And second, don't go under overpasses. Yep. But yeah, if we were with, there's been a couple though. There's one in Colorado I called Boss Hog. I don't like your kind, your chasers. I'm like, we're not these daredevil types. Believe me, we want to get home. Yeah. We're here to help. And ironically, we were doing a gig for the Weather Channel, and I thought, boy, we've really kind of bastardized storm chasing, haven't we?
Right.
And so I'd like to weed out the ones, I'm sure you do, the ones that are like just full of, like a certain girl that did a big old poem about a big rain shaft that she thought was a tornado. Oh. That was years ago. I won't say her name. Mm-mm. But yeah, people like that. How do you determine who's real and who's not? I mean, obviously you can by their verbiage. Or the verbiage of what they're seeing.
And sometimes it helps having, we've got some folks who like to chase in our office. Sure. They'll know people, right? They'll be like, you better get some verification that's actually happening. Or they'll say, okay, yeah, we know them. It's probably good, and they'll probably even have their number in their cell phone. They'll just pick up the number and call. So that helps.
Yeah, and so I know you got to get going here soon, but any thoughts on spotter training? Any ways to improve that?
One of the things we're doing that's probably not going to be popular with the general public this year is we're not opening it to the public.
Really?
This year we are only...
You're not doing the little county things?
We are.
Oh, you
but
are.
It's not advertised or open to the public. We are, and let me explain this for a minute.
Okay, I'll shut up.
All of the counties have their own spotter their own trained spotter groups. In some counties, it may be all the volunteer fire folks. In others, it may be ham radio. They all have their own that they manage. And so what we're doing this year is we're having spotter training just with their groups, and it's so that the first half we can make kind of the typical training we've always done.
Good.
But then the second half is more exercise based.
Good.
We will be going through scenarios and talking about, okay, you're positioned here. Here's what you see. What do you think? And
I love that.
So that they can talk back and forth, and we're saying, well, would you communicate this to anybody? Okay, who? And then we can say, like, for instance, maybe they say, I'm not going to communicate yet. Well, then we can make the point of, but your other spotter buddy is located in, maybe he's in a position where he can't see this. All he sees is rain, and he's got a tornado coming straight at him. You know, we can. That's the main reason we're doing this. And I've had some discussions with some folks. Some of our emergency management partners were a little maybe not on board at first. And I guess what I explained to them, and they kind of started nodding their head in agreement, was something like the fire department doesn't invite in the public if they have a new respirator that they're all training on, right? They have something new. They need to work this out internally and how it's going to go. And that's kind of how I view this. I
agree.
This is something, while I appreciate that there's a great public interest and there's a certain amount of public education that does occur, public safety training, that sort of thing, it's caused us to really water down the training and not be as technical as we should, as a result.
Sure.
And
I think a lot of those people should probably maybe just go to a CERT training or something.
Well, yeah, I think not only that, but that would probably lead them in. They could still get into spotting,
and then they can.
Yeah, and that's
what I think they should start with CERT and then go into that. How do you get in now? So since it's not open to the public,
what they'll need to do is that if they're not already involved with the county, they're probably not getting in, right? And so we get several questions every week, like, hey, where's your schedule? And I have to respond to them and explain to them why we're doing it. And I always tell them, if you want to get more involved with spotting,
right,
you need to reach out to your local or county emergency manager and ask them who they use. I mean, it may not be that they have the ability. It may just be a group that they can't get involved with. And that's just,
or they just have to work their way towards.
Yeah,
right.
But it's not necessarily
that,
a quick,
Andy. I think that's
fix.
Genius.
Yeah, I think that's great because what you're trying to do, like you say, let's not water it down. Let's get people so they're more at an expert level.
Well, yeah, because I used to go back in the day, back in 65 years ago, back when I started, I would go to the NWS talks, and people around me were like, I just want to know how the rain's going to be this year.
Right, and let's be honest.
So that's such a waste of time for the NWS guys that have to go out there, and women that have to go out there and take their time away from their family to go give these talks. I think that is brilliant.
Yeah, so hopefully it works out, and we get out of it what we want out of it. I do feel bad that we're kind of leaving a certain segment of the weather enthusiast public behind.
I agree.
But there's so much I think about when
I don't feel bad because if you really want it, and this is really what you want to do, like I did when I started, then you'll go and you'll do the steps that you need to take to go to these. And I agree.
That's the other thing I've told some of our emergency managers is we're not in the entertainment business.
No.
And a lot of this is really just entertainment.
I've seen people go in just to get the free coffee and donuts.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Or they were just into severe weather.
And just want to hear about it.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And I understand them having, weather's a hobby for a lot of people, or it's a passion for a lot of people.
Sure.
But if they're going to be a spotter, they're going to have to get a lot more serious about it.
Yeah.
And become.
Very good point.
If it's a hobby, you can get online and learn.
Right. You can take the Comet modules online. There's spotter
all kinds of
there.
things you could do.
You can go on YouTube and watch tornado video.
Kids today, especially the millennials, they just like, let me get a radar in SPC and boom.
Yeah.
I'm going to go chase.
Yeah.
I hate that.
it's so easy to be able to.
I'm not bitter about that at all.
A quick question, is this something that's just being kind of tried here in this regional area, or is that a national idea that they decided to go that direction?
It's relatively isolated. I can't take credit for this. Steve Reynolds came up with this. He calls it tactical spider training. He's the Warning Coordination Meteorologist down in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah,
sure. He did it for the first year last year down there. Said he had a lot of success with it. And so he came up to our office in November and kind of stepped us through what he does. And we're not using his exact thing. We're redoing it. But that's where we're going with it.
Well, that's genius for him to start this, and I'm going to follow it and see how it goes, because I think that is perfect, because we need to weed out the enthusiasts and the guys that go out and just videotape. And
some of the
get the more serious people in that are wanting to take this serious and safe.
Right. To help them develop their skills when they're serious about it.
Right. And some of the counties have asked, do we care if they invite in some of the TV folks? And we're like, heck no. I mean, people like Joe Loria, very knowledgeable. And in years past, most of the rural counties in years past, we only do talks every other year in the county because we don't have the resources anymore to do every year. But oftentimes they would invite one of the TV folks out to give a spotter talk, and we'd give them we'd give them the PowerPoint so they could go do it, right? So they didn't have to make this big long talk. Yeah. And I think that would be great if counties would have public weather education nights. And nobody wants to see me; they want to see Joe Loria or Brian Busby, or one of that's who they want to see. So.
On that one, I started out. I mean, I used to go watch Bill Bunting all the time, when he used to do them. But I thought about even, and I suggest other chasers and Mets, if make a couple of extra $100 and do one of those nighttime classes, continuing education on preparedness or spotting, something like that, where they could take a class via, one of those. I think
community college or continuing education at the high school type things.
Those classes that you can take at night, like basket weaving.
Yes,
community education.
You guys should do that.
Yeah.
What are you guys?
I know. I have been talking about doing it for years. Okay, so now I just added it. Now everybody's going to do it. But yeah, I've thought about doing it, because why not?
Yeah, I bet very popular.
I've done it for free for years.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, Andy, you give me Mr. Scriber's 4 minutes, because I know you got a call.
It went quick. Quick.
I know, and so and I didn't even get to half of this stuff. So
we got a little more time. I mean, if it goes 10 minutes long, that's not going to be the worst thing. It's up to you guys.
No, it's you. We don't want to muck up your your call. Good. So, but speaking of May 28th, what are your thoughts about HP storms up here?
Well, they happen more times than not. And that's one of the things we were talking about in spotter training is we're going to give them, you have to give them the classic supercell to start with the spotter training, right?
How do we train?
But very quickly, we're going to go to HP, and that's the poster child for HPs, right? It's in there. We know because there's a trail of destruction.
How do we get people to pay attention to that, though?
But that day, people did.
They did.
One of the things, going back to the May 2nd, 2008 thing, the outcry after that, people were pissed that next morning. They were not happy because the sirens didn't go off, right? Because we had severe thunderstorm warnings out.
I think it said hurricane force winds in the report.
Right. And as a result of that, we started the integrating warning team here in Kansas City. And
cool.
that's made up by the National Weather Service, the emergency managers, and the broadcast partners.
Good.
And it's so that we get used to working together and we understand each other's needs. And so what we very quickly found out was the TV folks need reports, and they need information more than just the warnings. And if you go back, I made this video. I should share the YouTube link with you guys.
Oh, please.
I took a lot of the pieces from all 4 stations, their broadcast that evening. And every time there was spotters are saying this, or National Weather Service is saying that, or the county emergency manager is saying this, I spliced it in there. And it was pretty neat because it showed that the integrated warning team was working very well.
Right.
And that's important because a big part of the integrated warning team is it really determines the quality of the warning that the public is going to receive from our broadcast partners, right?
Got it.
And that's really our goal, is to get the public to get so much information that it's no brainer what decision they're going to make.
Right.
And when I went out and was surveying the damage that next day, this has never happened to me ever on a damage survey. We always ask people, did you know the tornado was coming, or did you hear the warning? And every single person said yes. Everybody did. I've never been on a survey where there was even half. Most people were like, well, no, I was watching a movie on Netflix.
Well, even May 4th, 03, when it hit up here north.
Right.
They didn't know.
I probably talked to 80 or 90 just general public people, and every single person, oh, yeah, we knew. Either they saw it on TV or somebody called them or their weather radio went off or whatever. They all knew. And that was unbelievable. But that is also a direct reflection and a direct result of the integrated warning team working so hard for really a decade to get to this point where we work that well together that the information's flowing from the field through the weather service to the media and to the public, because that's really the ultimate goal, right, is to get them more informed.
Yeah, I mean, even with the broadcasters working with you, I mean, at this point, there's no competition. It's just the goal is to save lives. You can compete later for the damage, you know, but I love that everybody is working as a team. I love this integrated team you got going on.
Yeah. It's
I'm excited to see more.
What do you think about one thing we're getting more of is where they push the warnings via cell phone if somebody's located in a certain area? Do you think that's had an impact on people being more aware?
It's not 100% accurate because, we all have these cell phones, and sometimes you have coverage or not. Sometimes you have to restart your phone for whatever reason.
Sure.
And that's what you're referring to the big thing is the wireless emergency alerts. That's the system that the FCC and the cell phone providers have come to an agreement on and put together.
Okay.
Those are great because every cell phone now comes with it turned on. You have to actually go in there in the settings and turn it off if you don't want it. And it will let you know, even if your phone's on silent, it'll have a pretty obnoxious siren type sound to it.
Enough to get your attention.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised when I am out in the field. We're not out in the field as much as we used to be, but how often I'll get warnings on the phone now that I didn't used to get, and it just automatically occurs, and it seems to pick you out right if you're located here and you're in that warning. You get it.
Yeah, I believe the way most providers are doing it now is if the cell phone tower can, I don't think if it's in the polygon, but if the cell phone tower can broadcast into the polygon, it will send that signal out. And if your phone's in range of that cell phone tower, it'll go off, which means it's not 100% accurate because there's going to be a buffer all the way around the polygon.
But it is pretty darn good. It's quite an improvement over what's been in the past.
Is this via NOAA or NWS? Or?
It's our warnings, but it's really the cell phone
FCC
providers and the FCC.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, they've got to get the info from somewhere.
Yeah, there's some gateway somewhere that our warnings are going through to get to the FCC and then going out to the broadcasters.
Because, that's what I've always wondered is, how do they get those,
Right.
I mean, they can't just make that up. I mean, they're getting it from, obviously, an NWS station somewhere or whatever. But nice. I was wondering if there was maybe something separate that just for the cell phones.
It just seems to me like a lot of good things have come together over the last 10 years, like your integrated warning team, improvement in cell phones, and the wireless providers, the FCC getting together, and we're going to come up with some ways to do this. And it sounds like it's really working fairly well at this point.
I believe it is. Yeah. Certainly as good as it's ever been.
I agree. And I hope that continues. I think that's very positive.
And I think we're not far away, too, from it. Like we mentioned, your cell phone knows where you're at. We're not doing it yet, but through those wireless emergency alerts, I believe one of the upgrades is they're going to be sending the polygons out to the phone. Mm-hmm. So the phone eventually could just say you are in the warning or you're not in the warning, and that would be a big deal also because now there's that uncertainty of the buffer around it. But that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, maybe you get a vibrate tone or something if you're out or if you're in. Bells and whistles and lights start flashing or something like that.
I mean, he could even tell you just with some text, just like you're not, a tornado warning's been issued near you, you're not in it.
Yeah.
Or it could even say to your south or whatever.
Right.
Or
I like that a lot.
Integrating that with your GPS or even your phone.
If it knew your coordinates.
If you're driving to Des Moines.
You were approaching a twisting storm.
Or you're approaching a tornado warning. There's a tornado warning 5 miles ahead. Consider pulling over now or something,
Yeah.
There's lots of things that could be done with technology, and that's what's exciting to me.
Well, it sounds like we've really come a long way, and it's more, and ironically, it seems like more still needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, have
What's
you noticed
next?
this year, real quick, Andy, that most of the deaths from severe weather has been via tree fall?
I haven't noticed that. I haven't paid attention.
I always
to that.
pay attention to the deaths and injuries, and pretty much a lot of that or flooding. I mean, a few tornadoes, obviously. I mean, especially this weekend. But I've noticed during the spring season when John and I were chased a few times, it's all tree fall. You know, tree radius. And so I'm thinking eventually we need to start addressing just straight line winds, derechos, all that kind of stuff.
And the hard thing about that is we have our severe thunderstorm warning criteria that are the same all over the country.
Right.
And when I lived in Rapid City and worked out there, we would get winter storms with 70-mile-an-hour winds every single winter. And so we called it structural Darwinism. Anything that could have been damaged already has been over the winter.
Right.
So a 60-mile-an-hour wind did nothing on the plains of South Dakota. Whereas if you're in the deep south or on the East Coast, it's so much more impactful to have 40 or 50-mile-an-hour winds because their trees just can't take it. And they don't get that level of wind as frequently as like they do in the West. And so that's one of the things that could probably be changed. But anytime you try to change something like that in the Weather Service,
it takes forever.
Big, complex process.
Well, like everything else, it takes a while, and then it gets changed, and then the people catch up. But hey, look at how far we've come, and I still like to do a few little underground studies comparing, especially Joplin to Topeka 66. You know, I just still being in Joplin, I'm still nightmares.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and what the nightmares wasn't that I was scared we were gonna be injured. It was nobody, even though the sirens were going, nobody was doing anything. You know, so
what's the next big thing coming out for you guys?
Yeah.
This is really the future of warnings and has to do, you've probably heard of Warn on Forecast down at the, I don't even know what the facility is called, the NOAA facility down in Norman that's working on this, is they are working on combining radar data and high resolution, very rapidly run models to come out with probabilistic warnings and almost like plumes of who's under the most threat for the warning. And it would, theoretically, it would allow us to issue tornado warnings a couple hours in advance, which then you can say, I don't know if that's a good thing, because then you're just going to get people
more confused because people still don't even know the difference between watches and warnings.
Right, but where that really becomes beneficial is if you've got Kauffman Stadium with 40,000 people at a Royals game, and we can tell you with a 50% chance, there's a 50% chance you're going to have a tornado within a mile of your facility in the next 2 hours.
Wow.
They can take proactive action that's not...
Love it.
That, you know, it's much better. Hospitals need a lot of lead time.
Yep.
Any nursing home, any large facility needs a great deal of lead time. So not only will it allow us to pinpoint our warnings more, but provide lead time that some of these large venues or other facilities need with enough confidence to take action only when they really need to. So they don't have to do this. You know, we could give people 2-hour warning now.
Right.
Sure.
We'd be wrong probably 98% of the time.
Sure.
You know, and so that just doesn't make sense for Kauffman Stadium to evacuate,
Just
for instance.
Please make sure it's worded.
So this is using machine learning to...
I'm not sure if it's machine learning. I know that numerical models, just like we use to predict the weather every single day, just convective allowing models that are really sampling the atmosphere using radar data and everything else to update. I think like every minute or two, the model is getting updated. So it's a constantly updating forecast of what should be, how the storm should be evolving.
This is still in the test bed right now?
It is still being tested. They bring in emergency managers a couple of times a year to experiment with this and better understand, is it effective? Is it useful? And our emergency management director from Leavenworth County, Chuck McGaha, went down. He went down there in the last 3 or 4 months. Maybe it was in the summer. I don't remember. But he was down there as part of a week-long just testing of it, and he was blown away by it. He said it was amazing how useful it was to see this thing get updated continually and with a high degree of confidence. And once he kind of learned what it was telling them, they very quickly thought of all sorts of ways that they could use it to, positively impact what they're doing at the local level.
Boy, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So, I'm sure we'll see the initial glimpses of it maybe in 5 years, 4 or 5 years, but in 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how we're issuing warnings.
Everything.
So do you think that will replace the watch and warning thing? Because again, when I talk to the public, a lot of people still don't know the difference.
I don't know if
and it's because they both start with a W.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll replace it or be integrated into it.
Okay.
I don't know. Clearly the
I'm
dissemination
excited
system.
about it.
Yeah, the dissemination system is not ready for something that's updated every minute.
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, that's where we're going.
My God, I can't wait to.
5 years isn't too far off, though. That'll come quick.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty impressive. I've heard about this, but it sounds like it's coming along. So I know you're going to have to get going here pretty soon, but is there anything else you wanted to talk about briefly before you go?
Well, we're going to have you back if that's okay with you.
That's okay. I guess if you've just for the general public out there, I would urge them to follow our office on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
Our forecasters do an amazing job communicating information out, both in a lighthearted way when it doesn't really matter when the weather's quiet, as well as when it's hitting the fan. There's a lot of good information. And just to give you an idea of the reach, on May 28th, we reached about 5 million people.
Really?
Our information was viewed about 5 million times in 24 hours. So it's a pretty big reach, and the forecasters are amazing. The creativity and skill they have with communicating.
Back in the day when I first started chasing, I would always read the forecast discussions, and not just the hazardous weather outlook, just general discussions, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still great, and it's really easy. It's weather.gov, and then you just click on your whatever station that you're around, just click on that map, and it'll get you there.
Yep, we're still issuing those forecast discussions. Those are very technical meteorological discussions, and there's a lot of good information in there. And over the last 10 years, we've worked with our forecasters to keep doing that, but also be able to communicate with a much wider spectrum of society, right? Communicate in a way that they care. What the forecast discussions were great for weather enthusiasts, not so great for my mom.
Like my family, they would just call me. They wouldn't read that.
Right. So now we're trying to hit all the segments.
Yeah, just using the KISS method, right? For the general public. I mean, like we're weather enthusiasts, so we get it, but Joe Smith doesn't care.
That's exactly
Or Jane Smith. She just wants to know, is it going to rain on our wedding?
They don't care, and you have to deliver it in a way that they do care.
That they do care. Yeah. Bingo. Oh, Andy, can I have you back on our show?
Sure. Yeah.
Because we have more to talk about with all this.
We've also got some other folks in our office that you may be interested in. You probably both know Scott Blair.
Oh, we know Scott.
Al Petrica.
Well. I'm going to get Scott.
I'd screw up his name, Al Petichuca.
He owes me. Al Petrica? Yeah, he owes me too.
I'll tell him that.
They owe me.
I will tell him that.
I mean, I've been friends with those boys for years, and they owe me a interview.
All right.
So
I will tell.
I don't know if either one is going to be at ChaserCon, but we're going to do our podcast there.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll get a hold of you when we get back and let you know, and obviously we'll get a hold of you as soon as this gets uploaded.
Great.
And Andy, you rule.
I don't know about that.
Oh, you do, man. And you gave me some great information that even I didn't know.
Well, good.
So I feel like I got a little education today.
Very good.
And I want to hear more. Okay. And my headphones keep falling off, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't put enough hairspray on.
It's a sign.
You need a little more.
Being a girl. Anyways, that's why I love chasing, because I just throw it up and just roll. Anyways, I'd like to talk to you more as the spring rolls on. Obviously, we'll all be busy, but I'll find time.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for being here. And you really put out a lot of great information that I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about.
Well, it keeps it all together.
It's been my pleasure. Yeah,
that's right. Hey, thanks, man. Best boom. All right. Thank you to Andy Bailey, and thank you, John and Skivers, and thanks for being patient with the flu situation. Hope you don't get this. Like I said, we're not contagious. We are going to be not doing another podcast because we're going to ChaseCon in a week and a half.
Yep. Be there.
So we're going to be setting up our podcast there. So any storm chasers, Matts, you want to sit down and have a talk, come talk to us. And Andy, you and I will talk more later.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone for
so
listening.
Much.
Check us out at whattheweatherpodcast.com, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. What's the other thing? Google Podcast, Apple Podcast.
Are we still doing YouTube?
Yeah, we're still doing YouTube.
All right, Fred.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're still there.
Well, that's the only reason why I put on makeup. All right. Well, thanks again, Andy.
Yep, thank you.
All right, boys. We'll see you in a week and a half.